It was a rainy afternoon when the little cafe on the corner of Maple Street filled with the hum of conversations, clinking cups, and the warmth that contrasted against the chill outside. People had taken shelter there, spreading across every table, some with laptops open, some with books, others with friends laughing over shared stories. It wasn't unusual for the place to be busy, especially during rainy days, but today, something unusual happened that would soon turn into a story no one would forget. A young woman, perhaps in her early 20s, walked into the cafe. She wore an old coat, one that had seen better days, and her shoes were soaked from the puddles outside. Her hair clung damply to her face, and there was a weariness in her eyes that made her look fragile, like someone who had been carrying far too many burdens. She clutched a small, worn bag tightly against her chest as she scanned the cafe for a place to sit. Every table was full, but still, she approached one after another, asking gently if there was room for her. Each time, she was met with polite but firm shakes of the head, avoidance of eye contact, or in some cases, dismissive remarks that cut deeper than anyone realized. "Sorry, I'm waiting for someone. This seat is taken. We need this whole table. Try somewhere else." No one wanted her there. Maybe it was her appearance, maybe it was the faint tremor in her hands that made her seem out of place among the polished customers sipping lattes and working on shiny laptops. Whatever it was, no one gave her a chance. With each rejection, her shoulders slumped a little lower, and her eyes dimmed more. It wasn't just about needing a seat. It was about needing to be seen, needing to feel that she belonged somewhere, even for a brief moment. The sting of rejection was familiar to her, but in that cafe, surrounded by warm light and chatter she wasn't a part of, it cut especially deep. In the corner, near the window where the raindrops streaked down the glass, sat a man with a little girl. He was in his early 30s, strong-featured yet gentle-eyed, with an aura that spoke of quiet resilience. He had the rugged look of someone who had been through struggles but carried them with dignity. Across from him sat his daughter, no more than 7 years old, with wide curious eyes and hair tied in 2 neat braids. The man, a single dad named Daniel, had taken her out for hot chocolate after her long day at school, trying to make the rainy afternoon a little brighter for her. It was the daughter who noticed the young woman first. She tugged at her father's sleeve and whispered, "Daddy, why is that lady standing all alone? Nobody is letting her sit." Daniel followed his daughter's gaze and saw the woman. In that instant, something stirred in him, an ache of recognition. He knew what it was like to be on the outside, to feel invisible in a world that moved on without you. He raised his hand slightly, catching the woman's attention. "Miss," he called gently, his voice cutting through the clatter of cups and the chatter. "There's space here. Please, have a seat." The young woman blinked, almost not believing someone had spoken to her with kindness. For a moment she hesitated, glancing around as though expecting someone to tell her it was a mistake, that she didn't deserve the offer. But Daniel's daughter gave her the brightest smile and patted the empty chair beside her. That small gesture, pure, innocent, and genuine, broke through the woman's hesitation. She walked over, clutching her bag like a lifeline, and sat down with whispered gratitude. The warmth of the cafe seemed different from that seat. For the first time since she walked in, she wasn't invisible. Daniel asked if she'd like something warm to drink, but she shook her head quickly, embarrassed. She didn't have the money, and she didn't want to impose. Without another word, Daniel stood, ordered an extra cup of hot chocolate and a sandwich, and placed them gently in front of her when he returned. "No one should sit in the cold," he said softly, not making it sound like charity but like simple truth. Her eyes filled with tears she tried to hide as she murmured thanks, hands trembling around the cup that warmed more than just her fingers. The 3 of them sat there, an unlikely trio, sharing a table that became its own little world amid the noise of the cafe. Slowly, the young woman relaxed. She told them her name was Emily. Life hadn't been easy for her, she had lost her job, had no family nearby, and was struggling to make ends meet. The cafe hadn't just been a place to rest, it had been her last attempt to feel human again, to remind herself she wasn't just surviving but still alive. Daniel listened without judgment, his daughter asking innocent questions that made Emily laugh for the first time in days. The sound was light, fragile, but it carried hope. Around them, other customers glanced over, some in surprise, some in quiet reflection. The simple act of kindness from one man and his daughter had shifted something in the room. What had started as a story of rejection was becoming a story of compassion. By the time Emily stood to leave, her heart was lighter, her steps steadier. She looked at Daniel and his daughter, gratitude shining in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "For seeing me when no one else did." Daniel only smiled, ruffling his daughter's hair. "Sometimes, that's all we really need," he said. "For someone to see us." What no one in that cafe knew was that this simple moment would ripple far beyond those walls. For Emily, it was the beginning of hope returning. For Daniel, it was a reminder that kindness cost nothing but could mean everything. And for his daughter, it was a lesson she would carry for the rest of her life. That the smallest act of love can change the world for someone. Emily walked back into the rainy evening, clutching the warmth of the memory more than anything else. For the first time in weeks, she felt like she mattered again. The kindness of a stranger and his daughter had planted something fragile yet powerful inside her, hope. As she stepped out onto Maple Street, the glow of the cafe behind her seemed to follow her, as if she was no longer walking in complete darkness. That night, as she lay on the thin mattress in the small room she rented at the edge of town, she replayed the moment over and over, the smile of the little girl, the gentle kindness in Daniel's eyes, the way someone finally said, "Sit here, you belong." She hadn't realized how starved she was for that sense of belonging until it was given freely. Days passed, and though life didn't magically change, the encounter in the cafe became a turning point. Emily began applying for jobs with renewed determination, carrying herself differently, reminding herself that if strangers could see worth in her, she could too. Meanwhile, Daniel and his daughter, Sophie, couldn't stop thinking about her either. Sophie, in particular, asked about the nice lady almost every evening, wondering if she would ever see her again. Children had a way of holding on to kindness, of remembering those who touched their hearts, and Sophie had felt something pure in Emily that day. One Saturday afternoon, fate intervened again. Emily was walking past the same cafe when she saw Sophie through the window, waving eagerly. Daniel looked up, surprised but pleased, and before Emily could hesitate, Sophie ran to the door and pulled her inside. "Daddy! She's here! The lady from before!" Sophie's joy was infectious, and Emily couldn't help but smile. Daniel greeted her warmly, offering her a seat without hesitation, and soon the three of them were together again. This time, the awkwardness was gone. They slipped into conversation as though they had known each other longer than just a brief encounter. Emily told them she had found a part-time job at a bookstore, enough to keep her afloat for now, and Daniel shared stories about raising Sophie on his own after losing his wife to an illness years ago. His voice was steady, but Emily could hear the unspoken pain behind it. He had been carrying the weight of fatherhood, grief, and responsibility alone for years, yet he never let it dim the love in his eyes when he looked at Sophie. That strength humbled Emily, reminding her that everyone had battles invisible to the world. Over the weeks, they met again and again, sometimes by chance, sometimes by intention. Emily would stop by the cafe after her shift at the bookstore, and Daniel and Sophie often seemed to appear at the same time. Slowly, a bond formed. Emily found herself laughing more than she had in years, her heart healing in the warmth of their company. Sophie grew attached to her, tugging her hand and insisting she sit with them. Asking if Emily could join them on walks in the park, even drawing little pictures of their new friend. One evening, as golden light filtered through the trees in the park, Sophie looked up at her father and asked innocently, "Daddy, can Emily come with us forever?" The question made Daniel pause, his eyes meeting Emily's with a depth that made her heart race. He didn't answer right away, but his silence carried meaning neither of them could ignore. But life has a way of testing bonds. Just as Emily began to find stability, the bookstore where she worked closed down unexpectedly, leaving her unemployed once again. The fragile hope she had built threatened to crumble, and in her desperation, she considered leaving town to look for opportunities elsewhere. When she confided this to Daniel, he felt a pang he hadn't expected. The thought of losing her, of Sophie losing someone she had grown to love like family, was unbearable. He wanted to help, but he was just a mechanic with limited means, raising a daughter on his own. Yet, he knew he couldn't let her walk away without trying. The next morning, Daniel showed up at Emily's door with an idea. He asked her if she would consider helping him with Sophie, picking her up from school, spending time with her when he was working late, being part of their daily lives. It wasn't just about needing help. It was about needing her. Emily hesitated at first, worried it would be charity, but the sincerity in Daniel's voice made her realize it was more than that. It was trust. It was family. Slowly, she agreed, and from that day on, her life intertwined with theirs in ways she hadn't imagined. She became a steady presence in Sophie's life, teaching her to read new stories, baking cookies with her on weekends, sitting beside her at school plays. And with every moment, Daniel watched, his heart softening more each day. He saw how Emily filled the spaces in their lives that had long been empty, the gentle laughter of a woman in their home, the nurturing presence Sophie craved, the companionship he didn't realize he was missing until she brought it. Of course, not everyone understood. Some whispered about the single dad letting some stranger into his life, some judged Emily for being unemployed and dependent, others doubted her intentions. But Daniel stood firm. He knew kindness when he saw it. He knew loyalty, sincerity, and the quiet strength Emily carried. And he wasn't about to let society's judgment rob him or his daughter of something so rare. Slowly, Emily found odd jobs, teaching piano lessons to neighborhood kids, helping at the library, even assisting Daniel with paperwork at the garage. She was rebuilding not just her life but also her confidence. More importantly, she was building a home, not of bricks and walls, but of love, trust, and shared struggles. One rainy evening, almost a year after that first meeting in the café, Daniel and Emily found themselves back at the same table where it all began. Sophie was at a friend's sleepover, and for the first time, they were alone. The café hummed around them, but to Emily, the world had quieted into the moment. Daniel looked at her with the same gentle eyes he had that first day, only now they carried something deeper, admiration, gratitude, and something unspoken that made Emily's heart pound. He reached across the table, taking her hand. "That day, when no one let you sit here. I think it was meant to be. Sophie and I didn't just give you a seat. You gave us back something we didn't know we were missing." Emily's eyes brimmed with tears, the warmth of belonging overwhelming her. For so long, she had wandered through life invisible, rejected, unseen. But here, with Daniel, she had found family. She had found love. Their story wasn't about grand gestures or perfect lives. It was about small kindnesses that grew into something life-changing. It was about a single father's courage to open his table, his daughter's innocent ability to see with pure eyes, and a woman's quiet resilience to accept love when it was finally offered. It was a reminder that sometimes the world may push someone away, but all it takes is one act of compassion to change everything. So, dear viewer, if this story touched you, remember, be that table for someone. Open your life, your heart, and your kindness to those who need it most. You never know, the stranger you invite in might just become the person who changes your life forever. And if you want to keep hearing stories like this, stories of love, hope, and humanity, make sure to subscribe to this channel. Because every click of yours helps keep alive the kind of stories the world desperately needs.